My name is Eleanor Sterling. I am 32 years old. The judge slammed the heavy wooden gavel against the sound block, and the sharp noise echoed through the grand marble courtroom like a final, fatal gunshot. Arthur Sterling, a man who possessed a net worth of $4 billion just 24 hours ago, stared blankly at the digital monitor displayed on the defense table. His pristine offshore accounts, his vast international real estate portfolio, his untouchable corporate legacy, all of it was gone. The balance on the screen showed exactly $0.00. He slowly turned his head, his face completely drained of color, to look at the person who had meticulously orchestrated his absolute financial and personal ruin. He looked at me, his loyal, obedient, and completely destroyed daughter. For 15 grueling years, I was the invisible ghost behind the massive Sterling empire. While other girls my age were going to university parties, falling in love, traveling the world, and building their own identities, I did not take a single vacation. I spent my entire 20s locked inside glass boardrooms, staring at endless financial spreadsheets until my eyes bled. I was the one negotiating cutthroat corporate acquisitions in Tokyo at 3 a.m. I was the one managing the terrifying hostile takeovers that made our company a global monopoly. And most importantly, I was the one bearing my father's reckless financial mistakes before the board of directors could ever find out. He was the charming, handsome face on the covers of global business magazines. He gave the inspiring speeches, he shook hands with senators and celebrities, but I was the silent machine in the dark, keeping the lights on and the money flowing. I remember a specific night in December. It was my 25th birthday. I was sitting alone in a freezing office in London, finalizing a merger that would double his net worth. He called me from his private jet, surrounded by the sound of clinking champagne glasses. He told me the exact same beautiful lie he always told me. He said, "Eleanor, my brilliant girl, this is all for you. Every late night, every sacrificed weekend, every ulcer in your stomach, it is all building your future. One day, this magnificent empire will be yours to rule." I believed every single word. I sacrificed my youth, I destroyed my personal relationships, and I shattered my mental health to build his ultimate dream. I thought we were an unbreakable team. I thought blood meant absolute loyalty. I was incredibly, dangerously naive. I did not realize that to a man like Arthur Sterling, family was just another asset to be leveraged and discarded when it was no longer profitable. Everything shattered into a million pieces on a freezing cold Tuesday morning in November. I walked into the grand executive boardroom for our annual shareholder meeting, carrying a thick binder of financial projections for the next 5 years. I had spent the last 72 hours awake, perfecting a strategy that would secure our dominance in the tech sector. But when I reached the head of the long mahogany table, my leather chair was gone. Sitting in my exact place was a young, smug man I had never seen before in my entire life. He wore a suit that was too expensive for his age, and a watch he clearly did not earn. Arthur walked into the room. He did not even bother to look in my direction. He stood at the front of the room, smiled at the board of directors, and simply announced that he was officially stepping down, but he was not handing the chief executive officer title to me. He was handing it to Julian, his son, his secret son, a son from a secret second family that he had been perfectly hiding in a luxury estate in Connecticut for over 20 years. I was completely paralyzed. My lungs forgot how to breathe. The room spun around me as the board members clapped. 15 years of my life, my sweat, my absolute devotion, erased in 10 seconds for a boy who had never worked a single day in his miserable life. After the meeting, I stormed into Arthur's private office. I locked the door behind me and confronted him. I demanded an explanation for this ultimate betrayal. I screamed, I cried, I begged him to tell me it was a sick joke. He did not apologize. He just laughed. It was a cold, dark, arrogant laugh that will haunt me for the rest of my life. He poured himself a glass of expensive scotch, looked down at me from his towering height, and told me that I was nothing more than a glorified employee. He said women do not lead empires, they serve them. When I threatened to take my shares and leave, he smiled. He told me I owned absolutely nothing. Over the past 6 months, he had secretly and legally transferred all of my promised company shares into an irrevocable trust controlled entirely by his new younger wife. He had used my blind trust against me. In slipping the transfer documents into piles of routine paperwork I signed without reading. He fired me on the spot. He gave me exactly 5 minutes to pack my entire life into a single cardboard box. As the armed security guards stepped forward to escort me out of the building I built, he looked me dead in the eye and said, "You are nothing without my powerful last name. You will starve in the real world." Open loop, Futube. But Arthur made one massive, fatal mistake in his arrogant triumph. He completely forgot who actually built the complex digital and financial architecture of his entire global empire. He thought I was just a loyal dog. He had absolutely no idea what hidden, devastating protocol I had secretly planted deep inside the company servers exactly 3 years ago, just in case he ever lost his mind. I did not cry on the street. Tears are a luxury for the weak, and I was entirely out of weakness. I walked out of that towering glass skyscraper holding my small cardboard box, and I felt a burning rage so incredibly cold that it felt like liquid nitrogen pumping through my veins. I did not go home to my empty apartment. I knew his security team would be watching me. Instead, I checked into a cheap, anonymous roadside motel on the edge of the city. I paid in cash. I locked the flimsy door, closed the dusty curtains, opened my personal encrypted laptop, and began the silent hunt. You see, Arthur was deeply, inherently greedy, and greedy men always leave a careless trail of breadcrumbs. While he was busy popping expensive champagne, giving interviews to business networks, and playing the perfect family man with his new heir, I was meticulously tracking his dirty money. Thanks to the backdoor access I created years ago, I still had complete, undetectable access to the mainframe. I spent 6 agonizing months living in that motel room. I ate cheap noodles and drank bitter coffee. I pulled thousands of deeply encrypted internal files. I traced invisible shell companies registered in the Cayman Islands. I found dummy corporations operating in Panama and Switzerland. I uncovered the truth. Arthur was not just a terrible father, he was a massive criminal. I found undeniable proof of illegal tax evasion schemes, corporate fraud, and offshore money laundering that could easily put him in a maximum security federal prison for at least 80 years. But exposing him to the police was not enough. I did not want him just arrested. I wanted him destroyed. I wanted him to feel the exact same absolute helplessness he forced upon me. I did not hire a hitman to break his legs. I did not vandalize his collection of luxury Italian sports cars. Instead, I took the last remaining funds in my personal savings and hired Marcus Thorne. Marcus was the most ruthless, terrifying, bloodthirsty corporate litigator in New York City. He was a shark who destroyed billionaires for sport. I laid the mountain of encrypted evidence on Marcus's desk. We did not just prepare a standard civil lawsuit. We spent the next 4 months building an inescapable, perfectly engineered financial guillotine. I waited patiently in the shadows for the perfect, most devastating moment to strike. I wanted to hit him when he was at his absolute highest peak. I waited until the exact day his brand new subsidiary company, Arthur, the one he gave to his precious son Julian, was supposed to go public. The proudest day of his pathetic life. The day he was supposed to stand on the famous balcony and ring the opening bell on Wall Street. The steel trap snapped shut at exactly 9 o'clock in the morning on a bright Thursday. Instead of Arthur ringing the golden opening bell, heavily armed federal agents from the Federal Bureau of Investigation kicked down the glass doors of the Sterling building. They confiscated every single computer, froze the servers, and ordered everyone to put their hands in the air. Julian was caught crying in his office. Simultaneously, while the federal raid was happening, my lawyer Marcus dragged Arthur into civil court for an emergency asset freezing hearing. Arthur walked through the heavy wooden double doors of the courtroom wearing his custom-tailored Italian suit, flashing that same arrogant, untouchable smirk. He thought this was a minor inconvenience. He genuinely thought he could just buy the judge, pay a fine, and go back to his yacht. He looked at me sitting across the aisle and rolled his eyes, thinking I was just a hysterical, bitter daughter, throwing a pathetic legal tantrum. The judge called the room to order. Arthur's expensive defense team stood up, ready to dismiss the case. Then Marcus calmly stood up and presented Exhibit A. He handed a thick folder to the judge and a copy to Arthur's lead attorney. It was the master ownership document of Vanguard Holdings, the primary Panama shell company. The exact invisible company that secretly held 99% of Arthur's personal, untaxed wealth. His mansions, his private jets, his secret offshore billions. It was all legally owned by Vanguard. Arthur's arrogant smirk instantly vanished. His face turned a sickly, horrifying shade of gray. His hands began to shake uncontrollably. In that horrifying split second, looking at the signature on the document, he realized the terrifying truth. He did not own Vanguard Holdings. 5 years ago, during a massive corporate restructuring, he had blindly signed the master transfer rights over to a proxy, completely trusting me to handle the boring legal paperwork while he was on vacation in Monaco. He never read the fine print. I was the proxy. I was the sole legal beneficiary of Vanguard Holdings. I owned the shell company. I owned his massive corporate debts. I owned his hidden liquid assets. I owned his entire life. The courtroom fell completely silent. The judge adjusted his glasses and carefully reviewed the documents. He looked at Arthur's lawyers, but they were speechless. The documents were entirely bulletproof, signed, notarized, and legally binding under international corporate law. Arthur stood up. His knees were trembling. He opened his mouth to scream, to object, to fight back, but no words came out. He looked like a cornered rat. The judge sharply silenced him with another heavy strike of the gavel. The ruling was absolutely immediate and merciless. All frozen assets were legally transferred to my name to settle the stolen shares and the years of unpaid executive compensation. Furthermore, the undeniable evidence of federal tax fraud, which I had conveniently packaged and mailed to the Department of Justice that very morning, was officially entered into the public record. Arthur Sterling lost the company he loved more than his own flesh and blood. He lost his sprawling mansions in the Hamptons and his penthouse in Manhattan. His secret younger wife filed for divorce and demanded full custody of Julian, the very moment she realized the bank accounts were completely frozen and the federal agents were knocking on her door. Arthur went from a billionaire titan of industry, a man who controlled politicians and markets, to a broken, crying old man facing a minimum of 25 years in a maximum security federal prison. He had absolutely nothing left. Not a single dollar, not a single friend. As I walked down the heavy stone steps of the courthouse, the crisp, cool autumn wind brushed against my face, and it felt absolutely amazing. The heavy weight I had carried on my shoulders for 15 years was finally gone. I could hear the courthouse doors slam open behind me. Arthur ran out, restrained by 2 security officers. He screamed my name from the top of the steps. "Eleanor, please, I am your father. You cannot do this to me. Have mercy." I stopped for a brief second, but I did not even bother to turn around. I simply adjusted my dark sunglasses, stepped into the back of my waiting, chauffeur-driven black car, and looked out the window. I told the driver to take me to the airport. I had a new empire to build. They say justice is blind. But sometimes it just takes 15 years of silent observation to see your target perfectly. If you loved seeing absolute cold justice served to those who deserve it, hit that subscribe button right now. And leave a comment down below and tell me, how would you have handled this ultimate betrayal? Would you have shown mercy or would you have taken everything? See you in the next story.